Welcome to the very first episode of BCI, or the Blue Collar Initiative. My name is Joseph Garcia, and I'm your host, and this is Gib.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Would you like to give anyone watching a little information on yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Gib Reynolds. I grew up in Richardson, Texas. Came to Waco in 2008 to study entrepreneurship at Baylor University. Ended up graduating, getting an MBA, moving back to Waco, and I've been here for 15 years now, starting companies, teaching, all kinds of stuff.
Yes, sir. Now, I know you as my boss and as the president of CTPS, but I mean, we've had brief conversations before, kind of our differences in upbringing and, a little bit about ourselves. But so you said Richardson, Texas. Did you always live in Richardson, Texas? What was from the beginning to now, kind of give me a story.
Yeah, so I grew up with a dad who was an entrepreneur, although I didn't know what that meant. When I was a kid, he actually worked for Toys R Us. So we wound up in Richardson, just north of Dallas, because he was opening up Toys R Us stores in Dallas.
Really?
Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, I had like the coolest toys. Basically, if someone went into a store and opened up a package and like left it on the ground, I got those. So like, I don't know. It's kind of funny to have that. But yeah, I didn't realize my dad quit working for a company when I was probably like 6 or 7 years old. And started his own business. And so I just knew that my dad was always able to be at like my sporting events. He always worked a lot, but he kind of had flexibility in that, right? He could come and participate in his kids' lives. And so I realized like that's what I wanted to do. Yeah. And so as I started to get in my later years of high school and think about college, which is something I always knew I was going to go do, I realized that there were I thought I wanted to be a manager. Like, I thought that's what my dad was. He was just a manager. And I realized entrepreneur was the term. And so as I looked at schools throughout the country, Baylor, right, an hour and a half from my house, was top 10, top 5 ranked in the nation. Mm-hmm. So I applied, ended up kind of going there for school. So, I mean, for me, it was interesting because both my parents went to college. That was always like the career path for me. But I knew that I was going to school to learn how to basically not get a job, which is kind of different than most people go to college for.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So you talked about entrepreneurship. Do you feel like there's any aspects of entrepreneurship that kind of are the same thing when it comes to the trades? Because the trades and entrepreneurship by themselves are two very different things from working under 9 to 5 inside an office. So do you feel like they correlate in any ways or, kind of related?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, And I know we'll talk more about this, but like my introduction to the trades really happened like 8 months ago. Like I'm still learning a lot about what it means to truly pursue something from like an apprentice to a master level and what that means. But as I've really wrapped my mind, especially around plumbing, like the desire to get a master's license in the trade of plumbing is so you can open and operate your own business. Mm-hmm. So to me, ultimately the pursuit of entrepreneurship is deeply ingrained in trades work because mm-hmm. people don't do it just to become a tradesman or a journeyman, right? Mm-hmm. The pursuit of mastery is what unlocks the ability to go and run your own show. So yeah, I mean, I almost think it's maybe even a disservice that as you look at higher education, specifically like a 4-year college, they talk about like, how do you, do your own software startup, or it's never like, how do you do something very practical where there will be perpetual demand? Trades like plumbing, electric work, all that stuff. Yeah.
And I kind of touched on that when I did the trailer simply because it was a question that Mike brought up to me. He was like, why is it that you do this? And I feel like there's plenty of kids who might be in your position where they want to be an entrepreneur and they want to kind of go ahead and start their own business. But there's also those same kids who might not be able to do that necessarily and be able to branch off and make companies as you did. But they kind of do want to, start their own business. And I feel like the trades, as you said, reaching that master level gives you the opportunity to do so. Mm-hmm. And so even if you just have the master's license and you say, I just want to run it kind of behind the scenes, you can have journeymen and tradesmen underneath you mm-hmm. and run the day-to-day operations. And so I feel like in order for you to be the best that you can be, you have to shoot for what is the goal, the number one, and I feel like for me, that is to become a master plumber and to be the best I can be on every step of the way.
Right.
And so when you said that, I kind of thought about it. I was like, yeah, you were right. The goal should be to become a master in whatever trade that you were in, at least the very best. And so But that is kind of another way that, as someone who, might be wanting to go to college for maybe even entrepreneurship or something that is a little bit different, could kind of consider is, listen, if you get into one of these careers, you can have the opportunity to own your own business.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of looks a little bit different from, your regular way of looking at it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still an opportunity, and it's still, it's still very practical. But you taught at a university, you taught for entrepreneurship. So do you feel like entrepreneurship is something that is a little bit more practical compared to a lot of other degrees that you could get?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I think to partially answer it and help keep me on track, but I want to talk about kind of how I went from, 18 applying to college to 24 and founding my own startup, and why I thought that was a unique journey. And one of the reasons I want to do that, like to become a master plumber, you have to work underneath someone for, 8-10 years. Obviously starting your own company in the trades will be different than starting your own business outside of the trades. And I say that, when I was a junior, maybe my senior year of college, my dad had been working on this idea to do a hydroponic food production business. So basically, instead of using soil, grow crops inside of like a plastic greenhouse building, to optimize all kinds of conditions. He didn't really know what he wanted to grow, just that was a really efficient way to grow food, and you could use technology to really speed up that process. Fast forward, I applied my classes at Baylor to that. So I took a marketing class, and it wasn't like, how do I market, some silly class project I was never going to think about. It's how would you market food that you grow in a greenhouse in Texas to Texans? When I did my finance classes, it's like, well, what valuation might a company like that have, right? And I really tried to apply the practical mentality to stuff. Ultimately, it helped my dad, not realizing that if you fast forwarded a couple of years after I got an MBA, I would go and literally raise money and found Urban Produce, a greenhouse food production business in Waco, Texas. For me, people ask, like, why did I become a farmer? What knowledge did I have? Why was I qualified? I literally took a 1-week class on how to be a farmer at the University of Arizona, and a 2-day short course on how to grow lettuce inside of a greenhouse, and then came back with that knowledge, but also the mentorship and relationships that came out of that, and deployed, hundreds of thousands of dollars to build a business that ended up servicing 120 HEBs across the state, hundreds of restaurants, all from here. I didn't have to have any credentials or any background. Entrepreneurship is so much about the drive and the commitment to work through all of the hard things that come up that you don't expect. To me, what I've done and learned through that is definitely different than trades, because to do the same journey, I would have had to work for someone kind of in a greenhouse before I could open my own greenhouse business, if we're trying to liken my journey to like a master plumber opening their own business. And so to me, I have tremendous respect for people that have years of experience that says like they're qualified to do stuff, because everything that I've done, I've been unqualified for. Your question really started around education, right? So I've taught different entrepreneurship electives, primarily at Baylor, on and off for the last 7 years. And it's always interesting because I've encouraged almost every student I've worked with that I think has the drive and the commitment to do their own thing, like just go do it. You don't need anyone to give you permission. You don't need any amount of experience. Like, sure, you can go work in an industry for 5 years and you're going to learn something. But ultimately, what makes a startup successful or not isn't necessarily the quality of the idea. It's the character of the founding team and people and their willingness to stick through the hard moments and kind of like figure out ways to make it work, right? Like, great ideas don't succeed. Great teams do. And to me, that's such a key difference, as I look at the impact of education, trades, non-trades, kind of all those pieces. What it comes down to is someone's character. I don't think you can teach that. So, if someone wants to go and be a master plumber like yourself, like part of it is absolutely going to be character, but you also have to put your time in to learn the trade, to be trustworthy to do that. Right, there's testing you have to take. There's all kinds of insurance requirements, but those are really bestowed upon the people that have put in the hard work. To start a business outside of that, you don't have to go to school. Right? If you look at some of the most successful entrepreneurs of our day and age, they dropped out of college. College has value, but I don't think it's mandatory, especially for something like that.
So do you feel like because you did give worth to college and kind of the classes that you took, but do you feel like if you didn't take college and you weren't inside those classes, you yourself could have pursued, maybe YouTube or even just individuals that your father knew inside the entrepreneurial world, will kind of give you the same knowledge?
I personally feel like I went to college with a very clear perspective. So I went to Baylor, and I'm sure it will shock people because I was there the years that RG3 was there. My senior year, he won a Heisman. I mean, Baylor football blew up.
Yeah.
I have been to one Baylor football game in my life, and that was 2 years ago because my wife made me go. I went to college not to have fun, but to learn how to start businesses. Mm-hmm. I think because of that determination, I got accepted in a full ride to the most competitive MBA program for entrepreneurship in the nation. Mm-hmm. Like I went to college with an explicit goal of learning how to start companies. I had the chance to then go to more school in a really unique format to learn how to start companies. And then I started a company. I would not trade that for anything because I, through those experiences, got pretty good lessons learned and mistakes to avoid. With that said, could I have done the same stuff I did without doing that? Probably. But for me, especially because I raised venture capital dollars for my first company, I'm really glad I had the educational background because I at least was more familiar with like entrepreneurial finance and some of those like key things. When you raise money from other people, it's a whole different ballgame, right? It's not just building a business one customer at a time from scratch. There was an expectation of return, profitability, growth that I ultimately lost control of because I gave away ownership to somebody else from day one.
Yes, sir. No, that's really, I feel like a lot of people could kind of resonate with that, is just wanting it so badly that you give everything for it. And I feel like there's a lot of people who like the idea of college, but they also like the idea of, the things that come with it. Not necessarily college itself, but the things that come with it. And so, and even at TCC, I've met individuals who simply are there just to be there. Not for their program or not for what they want, but just to be there, to enjoy the experiences. And I've seen some crazy things happen, but it's about the opportunity. And I feel like you've seized the opportunity and you've made it very clear that when you did, it was very necessary for you to keep focused and keep, your head on straight with that. I feel like there had to have been, at least at some point, distractions or even things that try to keep you from that. So, what kind of kept you on that pace of, this is my goal, this is really what I want?
So when I was at Acton, which is the school I did my MBA through, the hardest course we took was also the least technical, and it was called Life of Meaning. And it was unusual to go through like a master's program where a third of the program was dedicated to how do you live a life of meaning? As you get to your final days on the earth, how do you look back and say, I lived a life well lived, right? Did people love me? Did I create value? Honestly, that course changed my ability to focus and do work. I felt like I had a better understanding of my calling, which was, tied to my ability to create things from scratch and see them from like idea to implementation. And so getting the chance to do that as my first real job out of college was awesome. And for me, like any distraction that took me away from that wasn't worth it because it wasn't following that path and that purpose that I saw for my life. I've gotten to start other businesses since then. And now, I talk about calling. For me, that started to hone more to, I'm really good at operations. I'm really good at some of these pieces because I don't have to show up and be able to do everything from day one. One of the key things that helped with that, a really, really successful mentor of mine told me is no one succeeds alone. Right? If you go look at the greatest basketball players of all time or sports stars or special forces, soldiers, whatever you want to look at, there's always people around them that enable their success, whether it's a coach, a mentor, teammates, etc. And so for me, the other half, right, not just trying to pursue this calling or purpose in my life, but it's also the people that have been with me by my side. In Urban Produce, it was literally my dad. My two brothers were our first employees. Like my family had food on their table because of what we did. It's pretty easy to work 120 hours a week when your mom won't eat if you don't succeed, right? And so, I mean, for me, it's almost like distractions didn't exist because they couldn't. Like, if I didn't, my mom wasn't going to have food. Yeah. Like, that's a terrible feeling.
Well, I feel like that, especially nowadays, that's a feeling that a lot of individuals are kind of having to face. And a lot of parents can play, we're going to be okay. We're going to be all right. And, try to hide it for a very long time. And I've been in the same position. My mom tried so very hard, so very hard. And my father as well. He's a very strong man, very prideful. But when it comes down to it, you have to be kind of another adult. There's no being able to, oh yeah, well, I'm just a kid. No, you have to grow up at some point. And I feel like there's a lot of individuals who might be just, going into jobs right out of high school to help their parents, to provide something in any way, shape, or form. But there's also a lot of kids nowadays who kind of go in a lot of different paths that aren't necessarily the most positive in order for them to try to help their parents or even try to help, whoever they're with, grandparents, uncles, aunts. But I see a lot of kids nowadays who kind of rush into things or they kind of want the money the quickest way they can in order for them to do any type of thing for themselves in any type of way. And so I feel like that kind of creates an issue as well, is because you face a lot of hardship and a lot of negatives are around you, and there's so much negative in the world, and there's very hard for you to find the positive, and you're like, I will make it through this. And I've dealt with it myself. But the way you kind of talked about that is, if I don't work as hard as I do, mom doesn't eat. And so pushing that in a positive direction is kind of what we're trying to do, And I feel like these are conversations that need to be had with a lot of individuals, and it's not necessarily regulated amongst young men. And hopefully we can, as BCI itself, can get to that point where we can go to schools and kind of speak to individuals and, say, look, you're not alone. Because I know what it's like to be the kid. And I mean, I've met so many people who go to THTC and they feel the same way, of where they felt alone. They feel like, nobody understands what I'm going through. Nobody understands why I'm here and why I'm doing this. Yeah. And so I've had very deep conversations with, just fellow students and people that I call friends. And it's very hard for me to hear that, because I feel like, where is our outlet? Where is kind of our thing? But we've all come together in a point where we want to try our very best to be our very best, and this is all we know how to do. Yeah. And so there's plenty of people who continue to do bad and continue to let the negative affect them. But what I'm hoping is that this can kind of reach out to them and kind of give them that outlet. Yeah. So what do you feel like is, advice you would give to your younger self if you weren't necessarily in the position that you were, or even kids nowadays, that you see on a constant basis? Because we do hire apprentices, and what is it that you're looking for? And that, you described character as one of the most important things. So when it comes to character, whether it be hiring someone or even just interacting with an individual, what is it that, are keys? And, what kind of advice would you give to a person that you might want to be in the trades, or might just want to be an entrepreneur, or kind of branch out from what is supposed to be the normal or supposed to be necessary?
Yeah, I think regardless of where someone is trying to work, character is such an important piece. And I feel it's kind of cliche because it's overused, but like showing up is a part of that. We have tried to hire plumbing solutions apprentices. They're like 2 weeks in, they've missed 3 days. And it's like, man, you're the new guy here. You're trying to prove yourself and you can't even show up to work consistently. Like, that's probably a deficit. So, as silly as it seems, like, it starts with, if you commit to something, like taking a job, which is a commitment, then see that through. And if you're unwilling or unable, that's probably going to reflect pretty poorly on you. So to me, it's like the first 2 weeks, I learned a lot about someone. It's not like you have to show up 50 minutes early every day and be gung-ho, but do you show up on time? Do you interact with other people around you? It's been interesting because I've hired people in a variety of industries, capacities, roles, some that went to college, some that dropped out of high school. All over the place. I've gotten the chance to work with all kinds of people. Folks that isolate themselves and don't talk to their coworkers, tells you something. People that walk in, put in headphones and don't listen to other people, that tells you something, right? So, as I think about it, especially for a young person, coachability is a big one. Are you willing to listen to others and learn? We started this conversation off about to become a master, you have to have spent so much time in a trade. Mm-hmm. Well, that time is not isolated. It's not like you're an apprentice off learning how to, install hose bibs. You have someone teaching you how to do that, and then you're entrusted to do it on your own. And then at some point, you should be entrusted to do it without supervision, right? How willing are you to learn and listen? One of the things I really enjoy about our company is I think if you took our 5 most senior plumbers, there's probably 100+ years of experience in that. There's so many ways to do things right, so many lessons learned on how not to do things. If I'm an apprentice and I go talk to, some of those mature, well experienced guys, like, how do you solve this? Or like, how have you tried this and it hasn't worked? Like, you're gonna be able to leapfrog so much of that learning curve, and that is ultimately teachability, right? Can you show up? Are you willing to learn? And to me, one of the things, I feel like a hypocrite saying it on a platform where I'm talking and answering your questions, but do you listen more than you talk? It's always nice to have someone show up who is willing to step back and not try to be the center of attention and just absorb, right, from everyone around them. I think that's important because building relationships is to me ultimately the kind of point of asking questions. Like you said, me as your boss, and I think you're probably going to learn stuff about my background just in this moment that you don't know about me because we've never had a conversation like this. Mm-hmm. But one of the things I hope you've recognized is I've asked you a lot of questions about who you are because I want to know what motivates you. I want to know what you care about because, as someone in a leadership role, which I think ultimately most people aspire to be leaders, you got to know what the people beneath you are motivated by, what issues they have going on, right? So to me, can you show up? Are you willing to listen and learn? And do you care about the people around you? Like, man, if you have those, it doesn't matter if you have the most technical skills, if you're a fast learner, slow learner, like, there's a place for people that bring that to the table, especially, and you brought up young men. I mean, it's hard. If your motivation is to provide, I think to your point, you want to show up, how do I make the most money the fastest? Mm-hmm. I ran a startup for 4 years and effectively made $0. I taught college on the side so I could have money for food and rent. And that meant I worked more than I wanted, but doing your own thing is not necessarily profitable. Now, it might become that way, but the amount of work that goes into it, like if your goal is to just provide for yourself, family, whatever fast, literally just get a job. Like, don't try to start your own thing. Because especially as an entrepreneur, like, the reward is not immediate. It is a life of delayed gratification. At the same time, if I have an employee or someone that I'm talking to that I know that wants to get there, like, you can tell if someone's willing to delay their gratification or not. Like, are they lusting after new cars or new things, right? Do they always want to have new clothes? Like, well, that person's probably going to struggle when it comes to like running a startup because they want to spend money today, not save it for tomorrow. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I answered your question directly, but to me, like, there's character traits that, especially for like a young person, I think are really important. And there's also personality and decision-making skills kind of in there, depending on the path they're trying to go.
No, I think you brought up an excellent point of delayed gratification because getting your licenses isn't going to be quick. It is not going to just magically, you snap your fingers and it's going to be there. Because even if you do go the college route or, the community college route or trade school route, it's going to take time. It's going to take patience. And I've ran into it myself where I feel like, I'm barely surviving out here. I'm barely making it. But you just have to keep going. Mm-hmm. And, I have conversations with my parents and, with my girlfriend about it. And they're like, it takes time. And I'm not the most patient person in the world. I understand that. But it does take time. Mm-hmm. And I give so much credit to them because I don't see it, but they do. And so I know there's plenty of people who were like, I have to have money. You have to limit yourself. At some point, sometime, there has to be a limit. Because even if you are working, I worked 120 hours every 2 weeks. And I was killing myself, quite literally. I was in 2 car accidents because of it. And I worked from 4 in the morning till 6 in the afternoon. And I would do that 6 days a week, every single week. And I did that for 3 months straight. And I could quite literally see that I was living life, but I wasn't living life. So I had money in my pocket, and I had quite a bit of it. But at the same time, I denied myself living any sort of life at all because I wanted money. Yeah. And so that really taught me a humongous lesson because you can have all the money in the world, but are you truly living your life? Yeah. And now I'm at the point where I'm probably the brokest I've ever been in my life, but I'm living life in a different way than I ever have before. Yeah. And so it kind of creates a whole different aspect of life when you kind of step back and you have to look at it like, okay, what am I doing? What is A, B, and C doing for me, and what am I doing for A, B, and C? Mm-hmm. And so when you talked about that of, it's not going to be quick, it's not going to be fast, but it is, when you get to that point, it's going to be better for you. And also another thing you brought up that I feel like is important is that you have people at CTPS alone that have over 100 years experience, but they all do things so very differently. Yep. And it blows my mind because I've worked alongside people who have 30 years experience, people who have 24 years experience. And even in just that small time frame, the way they do things is so completely different. Mm-hmm. And their perspective on things, how they approach it, it's a masterclass of working. It truly is. because I'll watch someone do something and I'm like, I never even thought about doing it that way. But they do it so perfectly, and it really creates a whole new perspective when you look at it. But if you don't allow yourself the opportunity to look at what someone's doing and kind of analyze that, then you'll never get there. So that's one thing too, is I've kind of run into individuals who simply don't want to be coached by anyone. Yeah. They feel like they know it all and they're going to know it all forever. But I've also met individuals who just want to know everything. Anything you can provide for them, anything you can tell them is going to be absolutely impeccable for them. And I feel like, finding the balance in between those two where, I know it, I'm comfortable, and I'm confident in who I am and my ability. But I also am ready and prepared to kind of, how do they do it? If they do it better than I do it, I'm going to go ahead and adapt that to what I do.
What I hear you saying, though, there's such a fine line between confidence and, like, arrogance. Saying, like, even if you don't know how to do something, like, I'm going to learn how to do this well, is very different than, like, no one can teach me, I'll figure it out. Right? And it's like, it's almost the same statement, but it's the intent behind it. If someone actually knew everything out of the gate, I don't think life would be fun for that person. Like, to me, half of the joy that I've gotten, I went from being a lettuce farmer to owning and operating a bunch of food trucks in the hospitality space, to starting a collegiate apparel company. I've sold energy drinks. I have done so many different things, and now I'm leading a plumbing company. Like, none of those things in my background necessarily qualify me from an experience piece, except, man, in starting my own company, I learned a ton about how to operate a business. And then I bought an existing business with a group of guys and figured out how to take something over and make it better. And then I started another company in an industry that I didn't know, but it helped me learn the importance of marketing and e-commerce, right? And so over time, I built all these little lessons. Every time, like, I've changed, I still have confidence that I'm going to succeed, but I try not to fall into that trap of arrogance. Just because I figured it out last time doesn't mean I'm going to figure it out this time. I got to lean on the people around me on how to do it, right? And so ultimately, I like, if someone does not approach something with confidence, I think they're setting themselves up for failure. But you have to be so careful, right, to not cross that line and think that you have it figured out. I will comfortably say, I'm sure you've heard this, all of our employee owners have heard this. I do not know how to run a plumbing company, but I do know how to run and grow businesses. I am having to lean on the people that know the industry, that know the trade, that know the relationships, and I'm trying to help amplify them with the skills and tools that I bring. And I'm confident that that will work because I don't have to know everything. And for me, that's super freeing, and hopefully it allows me to lift up other people to put them in roles that they have to learn and grow in. But ultimately, like, we will all succeed because I'm not trying to do it all myself.
I think that's the downfall of a lot of companies and a lot of individuals who do try to start their own company in the trades as well, is because they feel like they can do it all themselves. And I've talked to individuals, like Ryan is one, him and his family owned a company for so many years, but they kind of got to the point where they felt like, we shouldn't have to rely on each other. One person kind of does everything. And so I've talked to plumbers who, used to run companies but don't anymore, and they feel like, it was too much. It was far, far too much. And so understanding that you don't have to do it all by yourself, and having a team, having people around you who do support you and want you to succeed in the worst way possible is necessary. And so that's one thing for people to consider as well, is that, who is around you? Who is the people that are trying to lead you into your life? Who is telling you, hey, look, you should do this way or you should do it this way? And are they actually leading you in a direction that's positive compared to what, whatever they want you to do? Is it what you want to do or is it what they want you to do? And that's one of the things too, as well, that I've been given so much freedom in me doing whatever it is that I want to do. And so when I decided I wanted to do this, I was kind of nervous to kind of bring it up, simply because, do my parents understand? Yeah. The people around me understand what this is about? Yeah. And I feel like, after I explained it, they were like, okay, well, they kind of got it. And I feel like as we progress, we'll kind of be more understanding of what it is that I wish and what I hope for. And so, as you said, though, being an entrepreneur is not guaranteed success. 4 years of making no money it happens.
Just to point out, the odds of successfully founding a company over 10 years is like less than 5%. like when you say like it's not guaranteed success, like it's effectively guaranteed failure, and like some make it out.
Yes.
It's almost the opposite.
And so when you look at statistics, and I feel like when you succeed, it makes it so much more satisfying. And so when you look at trades and you look at the fact that you can become an apprentice and what you can blossom into after all those years of you just sticking to something and learning and being coachable, I feel like that's so rewarding because I've had individuals tell me, you know what, I'm dropping out of TSDC, I'm going to go just be a full-time plumber. And I don't have a problem with that. I have no issue. I mean, some people get upset about it, like, why are you leaving, you know? But whatever way you feel is necessary for you to get to your goal, I support it in every way, shape possible. However, how long did it take you to think through your decision? People are very hastily about, you know, I want this and I want this. Yeah. Okay, why do you want it? Who is telling you that you should also want that? And, you know, in 5 years, what's your goal? For me, 5 years from now, I hope to just be, you know, I hope to be a journeyman. I hope to be working at CTPS and doing the best I can absolutely do. Yeah. And from there, you know, the 10-year goal is to become a master plumber and, you know, maybe start my own branch of CTPS, you know. Yeah. Plumbing solutions in general could be a thing. And we've kind of talked about that and discussed it. But there's so many roles that people could take over and, you know, even just the marketing aspect of it. You know, we've talked about how CTPS doesn't necessarily have super great marketing. And, you know, having an apprentice or having me, you know, talk about my story and how I became an apprentice at CTPS could touch a lot of different people. Yeah. And so it's super impactful for me to feel like, you know, I chose something that makes the most sense to me. And I chose something that I feel like fits my character and fits everything that I've been through. And I feel like people should kind of look at that, you know, look at what you've been through, look at what you're good at, look at what you feel like are some of your strengths. And some of my strengths are just talking. And that's how I got hired at CTPS. So it came in handy, but it's not necessarily something that's super necessary for, you know, plumbing in general. But for the service side of it, interacting with customers is very necessary. Talking to them and kind of, you know, teaching them, you know, hey, look, this is what's wrong. This is how we're going to fix it. And if you have any questions, I'm here for you. Making them feel comfortable, even in their own home, is necessary because you're someone who comes in and you have to say, you know what, this is a problem. We're going to have you step out and we're going to do this by ourselves. And you're going to have to not look at, you know, what we're doing. And not that we're doing anything bad. However, you know, the problem has to be contained by the people that are there. You hired us to do a job. Let us please do it. And I have no problem having customers over my shoulder, you know, asking questions. I love that because I'm so glad that people want to understand what it is that we do. There's so many negatives and these connotations that are surround plumbing or even just trades in general as an industry that kind of make people look down on us a little bit. Yeah. And there's people who give us respect. There's people who, you know, admit to, you know, trades being very respected careers. But every now and again you meet people who are like, oh, you know, you work in that job or you have, you know, that type of job. But we kind of help run society. We run society greatly. Sure. And so I think there's a lot of people who kind of, after we're there, they kind of step back and look at, you know, oh, well, you know, if I didn't call them, who would I call? And, you know, if I didn't have people come in and do these things, and who do I have to help me? Yeah. And so I'm glad, and I'm really glad that I'm where I am today, you know, sure. And I'm very thankful for it. And I feel like you feel the exact same way, even if you aren't, you know, exactly where you thought you would be, you know, you're very happy for where you are.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I think we've kind of skirted around that, you know, I want to call out is how someone defines success is so telling. Right. For someone, it might be making $1 million a year. And, you know, I look at that person and I'm like, what are you going to do with it? Because I am certain that I've encountered people who have made $1 million a year or more, and all they do is work. To your point, you know, when you were working 60 hours a week, like at what cost? For like, what is the point of having all the money in the world if you can't enjoy it? And there's some people who what they enjoy is work. And so for them, maybe that is fulfilling. Right? That is certainly not it for me. I have never been money motivated. If I was money motivated, I would have taken my MBA, probably gone and worked on Wall Street and tried to maximize how much money I could make. But you have to make money in doing that because you're expected to spend it. One of the appeals, especially about like the community of Waco, is I don't feel like that ethos exists here the same way it does in a bigger city. Waco is a hub for like local startup kind of cultivated from here. And I think that I think that allows people to define success differently than living in a city like Austin or Dallas or, you know, LA or wherever you want to go, where there's a little bit more of like hustle and bustle grind. Like we have this really cool benefit here of sure, like you can do well financially, but you can also live a much more holistic and integrated life. For me, like that is a core part of success. Like success to me is like a 8-spoke wheel like, sure, making money is a part of it, but what is my relationship with my wife like, my family like? I love to be outdoors and do stuff. Like, to me, it's work enables a lot of those because I feel like I'm called to work. I think we all are. I think people find meaning in work. But that's just kind of a means to the end of enjoying time outside of work. I feel like more people would be better served if they could figure out how they personally define success as opposed to how other people do it. Because ultimately trying to please other people or like hit their expectations will probably be unfulfilling. To your point, maybe your parents don't understand exactly why you're doing this. But when I first met you, one of the things that really impressed me is you're very well spoken. And you have talked about what I would characterize as like wanting to share knowledge, whether that's through teaching or something different. Like you enjoy getting to disseminate experiences to other people. Like to me, it's not a surprise that you try to start a podcast because it's doing exactly that, right? Yeah. You're trying to bring other people on to create a platform to share those experiences for the benefit of others. And it involves your ability to speak well. Like, yeah, I mean, what does this turn into? Who knows? I mean, we're in, a building with 4 walls. Maybe somebody have your own studio, right? Maybe you find sponsors that will support this and help you grow it. Maybe it just turns into 8 episodes that someone finds 2 years from now, and they're 16 years old and they don't know what to do because they don't think they can go to college. They can't afford it, whatever. And they go, man, there's actually a future for me if I go to trade school. Like, who knows what this turns into? But again, like as you set your own definition of success and find ways to leverage and magnify your own personal talents and the support of others around you, like you said, I mean, that sounds like a path to a more fulfilling life than just trying to work 80 hours a week to make $250,000 to buy a car or something. Like,
and that's the thing as well is that, success can be defined so many different ways. And then how you look at careers and perspectives of everything. And perspective is so important to me. It's so, so important to me because how one looks at one thing isn't how others people look at it as well. So when I told people I wanted to be a plumber, especially from my family's perspective, it was like, oh my God, I'm so happy for you. That's because we come from poverty and we live in a lower middle class area. And so for me to choose a career that has virtually no downside is kind of good because there's always job security. I'm always going to have a job. I always have a paycheck, and there's always going to be a skill that I understand and learn that will have food on my table and a way for me to live. Versus someone else who might tell their family they want to be a plumber and, oh, why do you want to be a plumber? Why is it that you choose to do that? They kind of look down on you on that. So the perspective of an individual is necessary. However, what is it that you want out of life? What is it that you want out of your career? For me, it's to be a master plumber. Mm-hmm. For others, it might be a little bit different. It might shift, what it is that they choose to do or how it is they choose to approach something. And so success defined by me is simply just me providing for my family on all means, by providing for my parents, providing for my family, whether it be my wife and my children, and just living my life where I'm happy. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be stressed out all the time. I don't want to have to. And one thing you hit on I feel like is super important for anyone to know for any job is that you have to be able to manage your life. You said that, what is my relationship like with my wife? That's something that you had to kind of analyze before you just defined your success. What is my relationship like with my wife? What is my relationship like with my family? If all you do is work, it will have a negative impact on everything in your life except for your money. And I understand this people, money's all I need. Okay. Then you can go work as hard as you want to work forever until the day you die. However, what are those experiences that you had throughout your life, but outside of work? Did you spend time with your kids? Did you spend time with your family? Yeah. And you have to juggle that, whether it be in the trades or not. But when you do have a job that all you do is work from 9 to 5, and it does create some sort of wealth for you and your family to have, go on vacations and have money in your pocket and put it towards your kids' college fund or put it towards their, whatever they wish to do, I feel like that's success for me. And, being able to manage that versus someone who has to kind of work every single day, every waking hour because they feel like they need, X amount of dollars. That's not success. And it's also not just happy living to me.
Man, so one of the things that I really love about what I get to do today. So the company that bought Central Texas Plumbing Solutions is called Team Shares. Mm-hmm. And their entire mission is to unlock the billions of dollars of wealth that are currently tied up in businesses primarily owned by baby boomers who are going to be retiring over the next, I don't know what the term is. I'll just say 10 to 15 years. And buy sustainable, successful, profitable companies and convert them to employee-owned businesses. And the idea is to take those billions of dollars of wealth and then help put them in the hands of the people that have been grinding to help build those companies and the ones that join and move forward. To me, one of the things that drives me is I know that if we're able to double the revenue of our business or triple it or open new locations or add new lines of business or whatever that is, at the end of the day, when we are profitable, that money doesn't just go to one person. It doesn't just go out of state to the parent company that owns us. We literally get to pay dividends because everyone that works there owns a piece of it. You know, I would love to see someone who's 35 work in this company for 20 years, and when they're 55, get to retire and get written a 6-figure check because they were there from day one. They stuck through the transition. They helped grow the business. They grew into management roles where they were able to earn higher salaries, you know, oversee bigger jobs, grow as a person in responsibility and as an employee, you know, by developing new skills, and then walk away with the kind of money that actually helps them take care of their family. You know, if, again, like as someone who has done so many different things, if I was just hired to like come and run this business and in 2 years we're going to try to sell it, like that's not interesting to me. Again, if I wanted to do that kind of stuff, I would have just done it earlier in my career, but I've always been driven by doing something that's unusual. And so to me, again, like I don't have the skills to run a plumbing company, but I have skills to run a business. And then when you combine it with this feature on how do you actually benefit the people that have been grinding to build a company, you know, or joining to be a part of that growth. To me, I have a unique appreciation because I've started things from scratch and I've hired like the employee number 3 at any business that I've started is like the most valuable person because it's the first person that's not me or my co-founder to come and like, hey, we can't juggle all this anymore. That person is imperative to the success or failure, you know, for better or worse. And, you know, maybe they get a consistent paycheck where an owner founder doesn't, but that doesn't take away from the importance of that. So for me, to have found a model that actually gets to reward those people and everyone that comes after it, like, man, I think it's, honestly, it's so different than anything I've seen before. Like, I want to talk about it, right? Because it's also an opportunity. Like, you know, in your case, you just told me that success for you looks like providing for your family. In 10 years, you might go, I'm not ready. I'm not in a stage of life to go start my own business as a master plumber. That's okay because you can continue to work and achieve that. The average age of a person that starts their own business in the U.S. is 42. In 10 years, you will not be 42, right?
No.
In 18 years.
In 10 years, I'll be 28.
Oh my gosh, you're a kid.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a long runway before you be average.
Yeah.
Right, and maybe you do it at 38 because it's a trading you're able to do that. But, you know, one of the things that, like, any person that is your age that is considering this kind of path, like, don't feel like you have to do it in 10 years. Yeah. Because you could literally take 20 years and you'd still be below the average. Yeah. I don't know. It's just interesting to me. I feel like people, and you kind of hit on this, like, people want stuff now. Man, things that are worth it don't always show up now.
And I think that's something, you know, for somebody who watches this, I feel like that's necessary for them to kind of understand. You know, we get caught up in the now and, you know, I must have. And so we're going to like I said before, stepping back and looking at it from, you know, a different perspective and kind of different angle creates that for you. And, you know, it gives you kind of a better way for you to look at things because I did also want the now and I did the now. And I made $1,800 every 2 weeks, and I was like, "Oh my God, you know, making great money and this and that, but at what cost?" So you kind of have to sit down, start a list, weigh out the pros and cons of each of your decisions. I feel like that's one way that a lot of people can kind of navigate what it is they truly want to do. And so it's like you said, you know, I define success as providing for my family. That from day one was the goal. That is what I wanted. No pro or con was going to ever keep me from that, no matter what. But I also kind of learned over the years that what necessarily would make you happy. You know, how do you provide for your family, but also kind of, you know, take time for yourself. Take time for, you know, for you to spend time and actually enjoy, you know, memories with your family and, you know, people around you versus you just simply providing. Sure. And so No, I think that's very, very a key statement. And also, you talked about the way that CTPS is set up. I am a partial owner of CTPS, and I'm very proud to say that. And I think a lot of people don't I tell them that, and they're like, oh, what? No way. I'm like, yeah, I'm 18. I'm a partial owner of a company. I also started 2 other companies. And it's hard. It's very, very hard to be on a constant basis of you wanting to do it. Yeah. I wake up some mornings, I'm like, I can't do it. I just can't. I can't continue. There's no way. Yeah. But if I don't do it, who's going to do it? You know what I mean?
I think that's fair. One of the things that I'll also say, though, we, especially as someone who is an educator in entrepreneurship, it's so easy to grab like Inc. magazine and look at the guy on the cover, right? And it looks like it's an overnight success story. Like all of a sudden their company's worth X, or they raised X, or the company got bought. Like we are absolutely painting a false narrative. You do not see the 4 years of just suffering, of trying to prove ideas and struggle and do all the work that underlaid the moment that someone got on the cover. Mm-hmm. And it's so easy to be like, oh yeah, it was hard work, but then I got here, right? People forget the struggle they went through. The other thing that, I would encourage you and anyone else is like, you don't have to grind every day. Like I personally hate the hustle mentality. Like I think there's I heard this on a podcast yesterday. Toxic productivity is such a thing right now. Like, oh, if I'm not working 12 hours a day, what am I accomplishing? And it's like, maybe just work 9 and like cook a good meal, or like, I don't know, it's beautiful weather in Texas right now. Go for a hike in the park, like get outside.
And the result of that is burnout. And so many people don't understand how to cope with what's going on in their life because they don't give themselves the opportunity to breathe. And so, I'm a victim of it. You know what I mean? I have faced the issue of, if I don't work as hard as I'm supposed to work, well, then what am I going to be doing? I'm doing nothing. Like I have that mentality. But I have to kind of sit back and, like I said, I'm not patient. Yep. I struggle with that. And so I kind of have to sit back and kind of analyze what I'm doing. You're not doing so bad, but, we're going to work on some things, but just take a second. Yeah. And so, I completely understand. And there are so many people who also, we're in the crisis of, I don't have to hire someone to outwork you. I just have to hire someone. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's not necessarily, oh, I'm going to fire you because someone's working harder than you. I'm going to fire you because I just hired someone else. Yeah. So it's more so, what is the reward for working so hard? You know what I mean? And some people don't see the value in it. Some people, and I said in the trailer, there's 30-year-old people who sit on their couch at the moment right now, and they might be watching this and they might feel offended by it. But what are you doing? Sure. Why are you on the couch just sitting down? You could be watching this at, in the middle of the day, and you don't have a job. You don't have anything going for you. I mean, I encourage you to do something that would make you feel any way, shape, or form better about yourself or about how you're living your life. Because when all you do is let the negative approach and kind of, creep in your mind, all it does is feed more negativity into you. And so even if you just go outside, like you said, take a walk, cook a meal, do something different from the last day so that you can better prepare yourself for the next. And then one of the things you touched on too is that it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And I love that quote because so many people get caught up in getting there. But after you get there, what is there? There's going to be another goal, and then you have to go on another journey in order to get there. And so I think appreciate necessarily what it is that got you to where you are, whether it be good or bad, because there's going to be a lot of lessons in life that you have to learn, and sometimes you get them quicker than others. But you're ahead of them because you did get them before someone else. And so I think understanding that is super, super important because there's so many kids who, especially coming out of high school or going into college or in college, kind of feel like, what is this all for? Yeah. I get a degree and then they have, they don't necessarily guaranteed a job. I don't know what I forgot the statistic, but I don't remember the statistic right now for how many kids actually get a job in their career field, but I don't think it's a lot. So you might graduate with that degree, but then again, you might also not even be doing the same thing you went to college for like 5 years later. Yeah. And so enjoy the journey, whatever it may be in. And, our thing is the trades. Enjoy the journey in the trades. I understand being an apprentice isn't fun. It's not. You are going to have to go through something. Sure. But enjoy the little moments. Yeah. Like even if one of your seniors is picking on you, having that fun in that moment is rewarding, and I enjoy it because it's just friendly banter amongst individuals who both feel like, he's young, I was him one day, or I was him at once, and I want him to kind of have to go through what I went through.
Yeah.
And so, but understanding that versus like, oh yeah, well, you know, they don't like me, this, that, and the third. No, it's just they were in your shoes. They had to deal with it. You can deal with it. You know what I mean?
One of the things that, because I mean, I technically am one of our apprentices in our company, right? One of the things that I did as soon as I got hired is tried to occasionally go out and like see how plumbing works, right? That is not my job. I'm not in Central Texas Plumbing Solutions to learn how to be a plumber, but I'm a naturally curious person. I care about what we're doing, and so I want to learn. And I realized, especially some of our, we'll say saltier, more experienced plumbers started to pick on me.
They are a little different, yeah.
You know, but they wouldn't do that if they didn't like me.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy to be like, why are people bullying me? And let's be very clear, like people can be bullies.
Oh, yeah.
But I think if someone's willing to like, you know, I don't know, rib you a little, give you a hard time, and then you can dish it back and like, it's okay. To me, that's actually a compliment.
And for me, it's like, what other career can you do that, dude? Like there's an HR department in our company, but we don't use it simply because we all get along so well. Like
which is great.
Which, I mean, I love that about this, but it's like, there's nowhere else where I feel like we could have that banter and then not get in trouble for it. You know what I mean? And so, and I take so much joy in working alongside you when you do go out, because I think it's so funny that you're on the same level as me, but you're also the president. And it's so funny to me. I don't know why, but that's also something that, you know, people should take into consideration. You know, as a boss and as an individual who is supposed to be the leader of what we are, how do you approach leadership? How do you approach, you know, what is leadership to you, and how does that define who you are as a person? And I feel like that looks different to everyone else, like we said on success.
Well, I mean, one of the things that, you know, I think about that's been so impactful for me learning how to be a leader, not just today, but really throughout my career, is the people that are around me, right? So, you know, what I guess I say, like the 5 people you spend the most time with help define your character and who you are. And so, you know, maybe it's not people that are immediately in that like top 5, but I have been really fortunate to have people way more experienced than me, you know, often like older men and women who've just bought me a cup of coffee, you know, every couple months and like, how's life going, Gib? Right.
Yeah.
And just giving me little pieces of feedback. You know, ultimately, I think people are really willing to pour into younger people that want to do something meaningful and impactful. And to me, like how I define leadership is not, you know, there's not some book I read and that's how you're a great leader, right? Yeah. It's not like, you know, I came out of the womb and I knew how to lead all the babies in the delivery room, right? Like, I don't believe that exists. I think people have natural and innate leadership skills, but I think that leadership is a skill, and to develop skill, you must work them. And work does not always mean leading other people. It can mean learning from people who are much better at it than you. And so to me, you know, is you know, part of why I try to go in the field. I mean, look, for me, it's fun. When I literally get to go and take a shovel and dig alongside people, I have so much more respect for the guy that does it the next day, because I get to go do it for 2 hours, go back to my office and work on things that are my daily tasks and job. But I know someone that just did that for 6 hours and then showed up the next day and did it for 6 more hours. And I know how sore and beat up I feel. It's like, man, that's hard work. That gives me a newfound appreciation. And I think it's easy to get disconnected from that, especially as someone advances in their career. At the flip side, that's also part of the model, right? As you develop more and more skills, you should specialize and do less and less of that kind of groundwork. So, I mean, to me, like, you know, a key part of leadership is staying humble. And thankfully, I feel like I have a role in a company where, like, man, if I want to get humbled, I just go sign up to go
outside.
Yeah, I mean, literally go out and just go do grunt work.
Yep.
But to me, like every single person in our company started there.
Yeah.
Man, that's hard.
And for me, it's so funny to think about it, because, you know, the master plumber, or, you know, even the journeyman who stands across from you is, you know, talking trash, or you just giving friendly banter, is like, oh yeah, well, you know, you're doing that wrong. It's like, well, you want to come show me how to do it? Like, no, I'm good. Yeah. I'm like, okay then. Yeah. But it's because they also had to do it their time, you know, and I'm a little bit quicker in the mouth with it, but I mean, I'll put in the work when necessary, you know, but I think it's rewarding and it's enjoyable. And I feel like that's an aspect of, you know, any career that people don't kind of think about. You know, what is your relationship with your coworkers like? What is your company's, environment like, and the culture of your company?
Yeah.
And I think whenever you go to apply for a job, you should understand that. We're like, hey, how many people have working here? How many people have worked here for 20 years? How many people worked here for 10 years? Why do they work here for so long? You know what I mean? Like, what are your benefits? What are your, like, how do you retire your employees? And so those are things that everyone should understand. Everyone should kind of go in and, have that as a list on their shoulders to ask an employer. Because while you are looking for a job, understand that that job is something you should be committed to. Like you said earlier, it's a commitment. So if you're going to be committed to this job, also have them be in place or things in place for them to commit right back. For me, I have shares inside of my company. I'm a partial owner of my company, and I get dividend checks. Those are something that plumbing companies around cannot offer me. And that's something that I feel like I'm very proud to say my company does do for me. But as well, I'm a part-time employee, so I don't get the benefits of dental or healthcare. Mm-hmm. But when my time does come, I will have those benefits as well. And so I feel like that's something that people should kind of understand and know more about than they do. Because there's lots of people who will get hired, only understand their hourly wage, yep. and they feel like that figure defines what their company is about. Yeah. But it's not true. And I've met plenty of apprentices who make more money than me, but I'm like, okay, but what is it outside of that do you get? And they're like, oh, well, I get hours. I'm like, okay, but why would I leave my company to join your company when I have a very promising career ahead of me inside of my own? Yeah. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I am partial owner and I have my money. Like over the years, at the 10-year mark, I will have a very nice amount of money mm-hmm. that will just be invested every year. And that's just for me being a loyal employee at my company. But it's also because I've put the work in and helped my company make money.
Right.
So I'm deserving of that.
You were investing in the business as much as the business is investing right back in you.
And that's how I see it. But there's plenty of people who don't kind of look at it like, oh, yeah, 10 years from now from the same company, I make X amount of dollars, sure. but there's still only X amount of dollars. Yeah. And so as you invest into yourself, you should also look at it as, is my company investing as much as I'm investing into me?
Let's take yesterday, for example, because you've talked about culture and, like a very, very famous business school professor said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Like you can have the best made business plan. You can have the most thorough and elaborate, here's how we're going to roll this new idea out. A company that has people that are willing to stand up for each other and go the extra mile, like they ultimately win. Yeah. Maybe part of it's because of my background in, as an educator, but like yesterday, you normally work on Tuesdays. Mm-hmm. We're recording this on a Wednesday. You came to me and said, hey, I have to go do a school thing. I will not be able to make it to work. Mm-hmm. And the way that I view it, like your commitment is to be a student first. You are a full-time student and a part-time employee at our business. Mm-hmm. So yeah, no questions. You have to go be a student. And if I start asking you to do things that try to invert those and treat you as if you're a full-time employee and a part-time student, if I were in your shoes, I would see those as red flags. Mm-hmm. Because all of a sudden, wait a minute, this culture seemed to value the education that I'm pursuing because it will ultimately benefit me, but also the business, because you will level up in kind of your certifications faster. If all of a sudden I'm like, no, you can't do that school thing, you have to come to work. Yeah. Right? Like, wait a minute, that culture is now not aligning with the things. And again, like maybe I see it that way because when I was teaching classes at Baylor, one of the classes that I had, we would give teams of students $5,000 to start a company. Not an investment. We just gave them money. And, I don't know, the 5th week of the semester, I'd have a student come to me. He's like, I have a bunch of finals this week. I don't know how to work on my business. Like I have to study. And it's like, of course you do. You're a student first. You got $5,000 to practice being an entrepreneur, but you have the safety net of being a student around you. Go be a student this week, and then we'll worry about the company next week, right? And obviously, your circumstance, in your role is different than that. Yeah. But to me, like I'm trying to cultivate the same, atmosphere. Like I would love to bring in apprentices who go, I'm going to school because it will benefit me, and I can say, yeah, and it's worthy of us to invest in you because you'll also benefit us, mm-hmm. right? And as long as there's kind of a mutual win in that, I think it's a no-brainer. But like we need, I believe, especially for someone like you and hopefully others that come after you, like we have to have a culture that allows you to go be a student.
Mm-hmm. And I take great pride in that, and knowing that, you know, my business isn't going to be upset about, you know, the days I do have to miss, or even working around my schedule, because by allowing me to go and be a student, in the end, it helps not only myself but the company. Mm-hmm. But from the beginning, I said, look, I'm very restricted on how I can come, when I can come. And I was like, look, in the beginning it was a little bit better because it was Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays I was able to come in for the entire day. And now this new semester has come in and it's kind of only allowed me to come in Tuesdays and Thursdays and then Friday for a whole day, but Tuesdays and Thursdays after 10. Mm-hmm. And y'all have worked so well with me on that. And I'm so grateful and thankful for that. But not every company is allowing and is going to be willing to help you with that. And so I feel like if I'm in the position that I am in and y'all are so flexible and allowing of me to, you know, be a student, mm-hmm. I shouldn't kind of, you know, how do I put it? I shouldn't be disloyal, or even not even just disloyal, but, you know, kind of take that for, what is the word I'm looking for? For granted. There you go. It went blank. But I shouldn't take that for granted because I'm given the opportunity, but I have to seize the opportunity. And I feel like a lot of people don't seize the opportunity.
Yeah, I think that the seizing the opportunity part's probably more important. I believe the model within which we're trying to run a business in the trades and service right now is different. I do not think something else like what we're doing exists in Waco. Mm-hmm. I think that what TeamShares is doing throughout the nation is unique. But at the same time, like, someone has to see the value in what we're doing and go after it. I can say as a president, as an employer of that, when I see someone willing to do that, I don't care whether they're an apprentice or somebody who's been doing it for 15 years, I want to work around their life and schedule. Again, it goes back to getting to know people. We have guys in our company that desperately need to go home to be parents. Mm-hmm. And so when we have a day that's slow, right? Maybe the weather is terrible. Maybe it's rained and we don't have a bunch of calls. I think they should maybe be the first people we call and say, hey, we're slow today. I know this might hit you in the pocket. You might not make as much money this week, mm-hmm. but it's also spring break. Do you want to go home and spend the day with your daughters? And to me, there's some guys that, you know, said, nope, I need to work. You know, can I stay around? That's awesome. But again, like, you got to know people's motivation. But my hope is by making those kind of hard decisions, someone else will go, or that same person might go, man, my company's looking out for me. Like, I'm going to go the extra mile. I'm going to seize the opportunity in front of me. Again, maybe it does not financially benefit me today, but if life were only about money, everything I've been talking about is useless, right?
Yeah.
I don't believe that. So, yeah, I mean, it's easy to extend people opportunities. Not everyone's going to take advantage of it to the fullest. I mean, if you look at the statistics right now about employee engagement at work, effectively, very few people are actively engaged. Very few people are actively disengaged or working against you. To me, knowing who falls in either of those categories is important. But the scary part is, you know, when 60, 70, I don't know the exact percentage of people are just there. That's terrifying. Yeah. Like, we have 34, 35 people in our company. If we realistically have like 28 people that just show up every day and don't care, man, that's hard to motivate. Yeah. Right? And I hope that our model motivates people differently. But like, man, if you're just someone that goes and grabs that with two hands and really pursues it, like, you immediately jump out above the rest. Right? And again, like, didn't just apply to the new apprentice that shows up. That could be a new journeyman with 8 years of experience that joined us from a competitor. Mm-hmm. But like, man, I see how this will benefit me in the long run. Yeah. How do I show up? Like, again, like, going back to like, what do I look for in someone? Like, I mean, are you willing to show up? Are you willing to listen and learn? Do you care about other people? Like, maybe a fourth part of that is like, how much will you take advantage of the opportunity put in front of you?
I feel like it's a really great note for us to end on. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And I hope you can take some lessons from this. And if you have any questions, we always open to any questions at all, whether you be DMs on Facebook or Instagram or even just a tweet. Thank you for watching and viewing, Gib. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Yeah, but yeah, thank you so much.